right, Tobias. I mean, why don't you just start us off by telling us a little bit about your journey so far in CS and how you came to be head of CS at Worksome?
Yeah, so of course, thanks for having me and hearing my story. I think that's very flattering. So,
Of course.
so first of all, that's cool.
Thanks for being here.
So my name is Tobias from Denmark, from Copenhagen, and I actually started off my career in sales at Google, which was sort of my first job. It was my first real life experience handling clients and handling a portfolio of clients back then. So I did that for 3 years in Dublin, and some of my colleagues decided to leave Google to found Worksome. So it didn't take them long to get that set up shop and get up and running with Worksome before one of them turned to me and asked me if it wasn't time to get a job in the real world. And that's how Worksome happened for me. And they were just at that point starting up with the whole CS journey, the whole customer success journey. There was basically no one doing that. It was just the founders, a couple of engineers building the platform and getting started in Denmark at that point. So I was hired as a customer success manager at Worksome at that point, and the goal for me was to start up that function within Worksome, and then eventually build up the team at Worksome as we moved along, and the need sort of increased for more CS people, and that's basically what happened. And we at Worksome, we were all blessed by good traction pretty early on, and we started building that team. And I think when I left my role, because I just left my role as a head of customer success, actually, I'm now moving into operations instead, CX operations. But when I left the role, we were 16 people in the CS team, working across Denmark, London, and New York. So in our 3 primary markets, and that was a big journey. And now we're ready for a new one, right?
For sure.
What oftentimes happens with the smaller companies turning into bigger companies is that we need some structure, and we need to be scalable. And for us to do that, I kind of saw the need for operations as part of the CS and entire CX team at Worksome.
For sure. Sounds like a really interesting journey so far, starting from Google, obviously huge enterprise company and like a market leader in the tech world, and then to a new startup. That was also, I can imagine, a pretty very different world that you stepped into, but then obviously it's working out, and Worksome is growing to, I think you're more than 100 employees already, right?
Yeah, I think we just crossed 100 here in I think yesterday actually we had some new starters.
Congrats.
So that was a big milestone for the people team.
Nice.
Who has absolutely smashed it lately,
For sure.
I have to say.
And can you share more about so you've been in this role of head of CS and now moving into more operations as well. But generally speaking, what does a strong customer experience mean for you?
For me, it's and at Worksome, of course, I can only talk about, of course, how we do things at Worksome. But for me, it's always been super important for us to be close to the clients, not only by being close to the clients, not only by scheduled meetings and following up on those meetings, but also when they actually need us, right? The ability to call them up quickly, the ability to get in touch with them via chat or email. So that is very important to me, that we act fast when the clients they need us. For that, we're using chat, and for the bigger clients, we're also available on phone and of course during our planned sessions with them. But I think closeness and quick reaction times has been super important for me and the entire team, especially the support team are just killing it in terms of response times, and the more we can do to enable them to be faster, quicker, and better in what they do, the better, really.
Right. And so you just mentioned like response times and a few other KPIs. How do you use those KPIs, first of all, to kind of optimize what you're doing?
Actually, so response time in itself is not like a hardcore KPI where we're necessarily measuring the support team on. What we're really looking at is the quality indicators. So we're looking at CSAT, so the customer satisfaction score that customers they give us at the end of an interaction with our support team. That is like the must-win KPI for us, and that needs to be above a certain threshold for us to be happy. Then we don't care as much about the response times, because we sort of assume that if the CSAT is great, then the response time was also acceptable somehow, right?
How do you think that startups and growing companies versus kind of more old school, or like let's say bigger companies that are used to doing customer support in one way, how do you think customer support is now changing from kind of old school methods to kind of new school customer support?
I do think the new school is probably more. I've never done like customer support in like a bigger company, to be frank with you, right? But what I do think, what I would assume is that in the new school companies, the customer support agents are more empowered to do what needs to be done, and also to come up with new ideas and be flexible in terms of what tools to use in order to support the customer in general terms. And at least that's how we go about it in Worksome, right? So we have our support tools, of course, that are like part of our stack. We have our methods and our processes, but if for one or the other reason you need to go beyond that, you have the freedom to do so and make that call in your job as a support person. Whereas, going maybe 10 or 20 years back, you would have maybe a support person with like a manual they have to follow when they encounter this. You do that, and then you follow the manual, and you can give this much back to the customer if you need to, but not beyond that. Whereas I think today, at least in Worksome, like we have a tendency to do it more on, of course there has to be structure, there has to be some rules and guidelines that people follow, but I would say we're definitely giving all the freedom that support teams would need in order to do their jobs just today, but also to get better at them and to become more efficient. And it's a big part of any. It's almost like a responsibility of any customer support agent or manager, what you want to call them, to not only do the day-to-day stuff, answer questions from clients and users in general, but also to lift yourself up and think about, so how can I do this more efficiently tomorrow? Like what are the processes I can suggest and put into place in order to actually cater better to my clients' questions going forward, right? So that's big part of the culture that I've been trying to get through with our support teams. And of course that can be difficult when, pardon my French, shit hits the fan and you have to act quick, then you get more into the day to day. But I think it's the leadership's responsibility then to say, okay, then maybe let's give some time back somehow. Maybe we need to hire more. Maybe we need to do things more efficiently. Maybe we need to optimize systems to give the team actually time to think about how to work better.
That makes a lot of sense. And so more like also broadly speaking on a market perspective, how do you think that, or rather I should say, why do you think that customer support is moving away from being seen as a cost center to potentially a driver for a lot of growth in companies?
I think that's true for most of the customer facing teams in any organization, and I do think that quite a lot of it's because a lot of the interactions they tend to happen via support, right? First of all, it's become easier to get in touch with many support teams. They have, today you can almost literally on any site you can access someone through a chat feature, right? Which is very accessible, and that also means that it's oftentimes going to be the first point of contact for many of the interactions that go on with your clients. That's going to be through the support team. That means that it's now all of a sudden, in some way or in some cases, removed away from the customer success manager or the account manager over to a support person. So yeah, just from that, it becomes big part of this, and that's obviously something you have to be aware of, and give the support people the tools they need in order to deal with that and
For sure.
and leverage.
To empower them, basically.
Yeah, exactly, and leverage that situation.
Yeah.
It can also be a better way of actually, it can be a better entry to grow your clients. It can sometimes be not the coolest thing to be sold to, but if you're actually, I mean, we've all felt that when some salesperson calls you up, but if you're actually asking for some help and you're getting that help, and then, oh, by the way, have you thought about this? There's this thing you can optimize in your account, and that, yeah, it will make Worksome more money, but it will also actually make it more convenient for the client. That's a great incremental opportunity that's
Right.
sort of being unlocked in a situation that isn't very pushy or salesy in the sense.
And at the end of the day, I mean, you have so many competitors in every SaaS company, right?
Yeah.
I would imagine that if you're not happy with a vendor, it's easier to switch because you have more options than ever. So customer support, at least from what we observe in the market, really needs to be kind of like a competitive advantage for you as well.
Yeah.
But I really can kind of echo the ethos that you're saying here, especially with empowering your support agents here.
Yeah. And again, that sort of also, part of that empowering is making it easy for the support agents to get close to the clients. Not only, get close to, give them the tools they need in order to get close to them. One thing is having a chat feature, another thing is being able to email them, but also giving them information about the clients, who are they, what's their history with Worksome, easy access to all of those details makes it easier for them to get close to that client and understand, where they're actually coming from. So,
and it makes more sense for them to upgrade, or at least for you guys to upsell them, but in a genuine way that actually helps them
exactly.
out. Not just to gouge them for more money, but really like when they actually need it. So it really is a win-win when it comes from CS teams rather than old school sales teams as well. So moving on to a different question here. So how do you see that more companies, they can address this gap that often occurs between customer support teams and product teams? Because customer support teams, like you also mentioned yourself, are the first point of contact for your customers, at least your existing customers, and they often kind of see the most of the problems that occur. They're the first ones in your company. But in a lot of companies, it's hard to then feed that back to the developers and the product teams. How do you kind of deal with that issue?
So I think it's true that there is actually a risk that will happen, and silos do, they get built up over time, and especially as teams they grow, then they will tend to get really honed in on their own stuff, right? And product teams might have a tendency to be very product focused, whereas the customer success teams have a tendency to be very customer centric, right? And that's all fine, but where you have the issue is, of course, when you're just building the product for the sake of the product and forget sort of what it is the clients they want, right? So that's not what's happening at Worksome. And I think, what can you do to bridge that gap? You can do many things, right? But first and foremost, it's important to have a culture where those silos are not, or where those silos are not that visible, or where they're sort of broken down, right? You have to foster that collaboration between teams, and there are probably many ways of doing this. What we do at Worksome is to actually focus on common goals in those teams. So, and our product team has done a tremendous job at this, and they are actually owning that part of the process, which is involving all teams in the company and then focusing on specific goals related to developing the product. So specifically what they do is they look at our user personas, and then all teams can sort of pitch in with product improvements or new things we need to develop on. It could be entirely new parts of the products, it could be incremental improvements. Doesn't really matter, but we're sort of focusing on, okay, who does this actually solve something for of our user personas? What is the problem we're trying to solve for? And then in each of those persona sessions, we're sort of pitching our problems. We're not pitching the solution, we're just pitching the problems, really with the customer in mind. And obviously that comes from many teams. Also, sales team is also in these sessions. Our finance team is also in these sessions. But of course, our customer success team, the entirety of that team is also part of pitching into those sessions. And I feel like that is really, at least works really well, and kudos to our product team for setting this up. It gives the chance for every team to actually pitch in on what they think is important for our clients, not for just having a cool product or for the sake of the product or sake of the engineering challenge or whatever, but for actually solving issues for the clients. That works really efficient. So I'd say, like in summary, maybe encourage that working together across the teams. If that's via sessions on a monthly, weekly basis, that's how we do it and bridge that gap. And then have like common goals that everyone can work towards. And in our case, that's solving for specific personas and users that we have,
right,
and their issues.
Okay. And when it comes to, for example, bugs and things like that, do you have already a process? I know you mentioned that now the new role you're stepping into is actually implementing a lot of these processes. So maybe something that you're going to do. But do you already have like a plan for how you basically process bugs that are then, let's say, reported to a customer support agent? How do you actually feed that back into the product team and avoid having this ping pong between support agents, customers and developers for information?
Exactly. That's a challenge we had actually half a year ago. Something we realized was a challenge for us, because we were spending so much time on relaying the information we got related to technical bugs, or was it a technical bug? You weren't really sure. You had to somehow involve some technical person, and just to be frank, we hired our way out of it. So we have a technical product specialist who is in charge of taking all the information that comes from the support team, from the customer success managers, essentially the whole CX team, everyone who's talking to clients, anything that comes in from there with related to technical queries or bugs, stuff like that. He's filtering that, so to speak, and sending all the bugs. They're going to the tech team. All the things we thought were bugs, but were just a matter of how the system works. He can feed that back to the customer facing teams and let them know how the system is working, and that it's actually not a bug, but just a matter of the setup, for instance.
So he's kind of the bridge.
He's actually bridging that gap, right? And he will also be building the Jira tickets and funneling that down to the engineering team at that point. So he's sort of a technical resource within CS, within the customer success team, that we can use for actually getting these things sorted and prioritized as well. So and also shed some light on the technical aspects of what we think might be a bug or might be wrong with the issue, which is really, really nice, because that way we avoid spending engineering time on that. We avoid, we used to involve the engineering team, and in those cases, and what we oftentimes saw was just that our CTO, who obviously has all the answers because he built the whole thing, he would spend a lot of his time just answering that Slack thread, right? And
Which is not a good use of his
which
time,
is not the best use, at least.
Yeah.
You'll probably find better things to do.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah. CTO with 100 employees. Yeah.
So we found like quickly came to the realization in collaboration with the product team actually that it would be good to have that sort of technical resource to sit in between the customer facing team and the product and development team.
Why do you think more? First of all, it sounds like a really great idea to do that. But why do you think more SaaS companies haven't done it? Is it hard to find these technical support people, or they just haven't thought of it?
I mean, it's not easy to find anyone these days, and it's probably the realization that needs to come before you actually go ahead and hire that person. I had never heard of having a resource like that, so I would never have asked for it. And It was actually our development team who came and said, so our VP of engineering came and said, well, I've been in organizations where we had that sort of resource within the CS team or within the product team, really doesn't matter, but we decided to put him in the CS team to be closer to the support team as well. And like the conversation sort of started there. So there was that experience. And that's what kickstarted it for us, right? I don't know that it's not a normal thing to have. Maybe it isn't. Maybe it is.
For sure.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Sounds great. I think that was actually even more than 15 minutes, but I think that was good. I'm pretty happy with that. Anything else you want to add?
I mean,
or plug?
No, I think plug.
By Worksome.
I have nothing to plug other than I think the whole discussion on what founders and leaders of a company can do in order to bridge that gap. I think it's super important, right? So that's like and I do think it's one of the things we've managed to do well at Worksome. Mm-hmm. But it also comes down to who you can hire and what sort of culture you can foster as a founder in your company. And hiring is one thing. Like that's there's a lot of factors playing into that, right? If you can hire the right people with the right mindset and that collaborative mindset, that's obviously super important. And then how you foster it afterwards and make sure to give those common goals and let everyone know this is the North Star we're following and trying to steer towards.
And give people an incentive to take ownership,
exactly.
Right? Actually care about the customer and not just want to scan through tickets. Exactly,
and that's very much with the founders as well to make sure that is part of our ethos as a company, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's an interesting challenge, but it's definitely one that is more easily solved with those things in place.
For sure.
Yeah.
And the right tools.
And the right tools, of course. Yeah.
Yes.
I mean.
Good.
Yeah.
All right. I think that was really good.
Great.